I'm fascinated and candidly, I'm impressed. I never really could understand what the 2 week pause meant or what it was for. What was left to negotiate? What were we going to expect the Iranians to offer? In many ways, it was much like a Trump deal. I mean, he's trying to make a deal to buy an apartment, but all of a sudden the apartment was destroyed. So where's the negotiation? So I think the use of deception and trickery in this case, first of all, was successful, but second of all, saved the potential loss of American lives.
And we're back to Liberty Lockdown. This is Clint Russell. Thank you for tuning in once again. And I am joined by a very special guest, as always, Miss Josie, the redheaded libertarian.
Hi, thank you for having me on your show.
Obviously, we did the conversation with the guys, including Sam Tripoli, and you and I weren't on at the same time. So I figured let's have a little deeper conversation about some of the topics that were covered. First off, I wanted to ask you about how you think I know you're not like as hard in the paint, crazy anti-war as I am. You don't focus on geopolitics nearly as much as I do. You're more domestic, constitutional, border issues, things like that, and culture issues.
I think that we have new access lines being drawn. So, in the same way, we're seeing countries align with Iran or align with America or align with Israel. We're seeing influencers kind of do the same thing. And they're trying to, and the thing is, President Trump ran on a non interventionist policy. So, all we're doing is holding him accountable to that. And they're trying to say those people are fake MAGA. And you take someone like Owen Schroyer, for instance, who's
Right.
been a major, major target at this, and saying he's fake MAGA when he's literally gone to jail for his beliefs and his support of President Trump.
Well, and not just Owen, but Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon's been very outspoken, and he literally went to jail for an extended period of time because he refused to turn over basically the private conversations that he had had with Trump before J6. You don't get much more loyal than Steve Bannon. And for a lot of the people to be upset with him is just like, okay, you just want war. Like, that's my read of things. There's all these allegations, right, that Qataris are paying people like you and I to basically want Trump to do what he said, which is to not get us in another Middle Eastern war. And yet they're accusing us of being bought and paid for to do that. Look, I'm not saying it's all of them. It's certainly not. But I do think that there's a distinct possibility that some right-wing influencer accounts are in fact being paid as they accuse us of sowing division to in fact be doing that very thing, that they are sowing division in hopes of basically alienating the non-interventionist anti-war camp, the libertarian camp out of the coalition so that then the old school neocon guard can get in there at the behest of both Israel and the military industrial complex. That's my gut instinct. Am I crazy?
Oh, you accuse your enemy of that which you are guilty, accusing you and I, or I don't know, Cernovich, Posobiec, of being talking heads for Qatar, which also kind of came out of nowhere. And it's just not true. Like, I'm not getting paid for that. You're not getting paid for that.
No.
I work for like Timcast or something, but
Well, he's also not dictating your talking points. So
I'm allowed to have free speech over on IRL when I work for Timcast. And that's what's so great about working there. I can think of other places if I got hired there that I wouldn't have those speech rights.
Hmm. I wonder what space she's talking about. Yeah, I would say Daily Wire, you probably couldn't do it. The Blaze, you probably couldn't do it because despite the fact that, generally speaking, I like Glenn Beck, when it comes to Israel, he is not exactly an impartial observer. I also find it fascinating. I was obviously in California to do Freedom Fest. I spoke with Angela McArdle and Brett Weinstein on stage. Hopefully, I'll be able to get that interview out to you guys. But I came back to a busted PC sound connection issue that took me 3 days to remedy. So I'm back in business now. When I first got back, the day that I got back was the Tucker Carlson versus Ted Cruz showdown. And I thought it was just spectacular. I thought that Tucker really hammered him on so many of the 101 arguments for intervention and why Israel is our greatest ally and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, oh, finally someone did it. What's really remarkable about Tucker is that what he's saying is not that remarkable, that it is only remarkable because it's so rare, because there isn't a single fucking journalist in this country, hardly, that asks real questions, that goes like, yeah, what does Israel do for us? Like, what intel are you functioning off of? How do you know that they're going to have nukes in a couple weeks? Journalists just never follow up. They just go like, oh, okay, let's go to war.
I really like the part of that interview where he got Ted Cruz to essentially say, "We are at war with Iran," and he's like, "Well, you're breaking news right now because"
He's like, "We're bombing them right now."
and they said, "Well, not us, but Israel is," and, like, almost like, "We're giving him permission," and it's like, "No, I mean, like, philosophically, we support that," and then Ted Cruz was like, "You're being so smug," or something like that, and it's like, "No, he's just asking you questions that you're not used to being asked."
I did like Tucker's response there. He's like, "Could you be a little less smug?" He's like, "You're right, I should be. That's one of my, one of my foibles," or whatever he said. But yeah, it's time. Like, I think that's been my greatest frustration with the MAGA influencer class that is, even though they would say that they're not, Laura Looms of the world, as I've said many times. I know her, I like her, but Jesus Christ, war is afoot. She and I couldn't be more far apart. And there's this constant accusations of, like, us accusing Trump of wanting to go to war or him already being at war. And it's like, look, I'm not accusing him of anything. I don't know what the fuck's happening. All I'm saying is that if you're like an adult human being that lived through '01 through '03, which she was young, but she lived through it. You have to remember this. Like, you have to remember the arc that led to the greatest catastrophe in foreign policy history in my lifetime, at least, which was the war on terror. And it's like, we are speed running that. And anybody who lived through that knows that we're speed running it. It's all of the similarities, all of the hallmarks exist the exact same way. And yet, if I just go like, hey, I'm seeing some stuff here that looks like the hallmarks of us going to an unnecessary, illegal, unconstitutional, undeclared war again, and I don't wanna do that.
That are your boys aren't gonna die in Israel. It's like, so we're not gonna go to war? They're screaming for war at one side of their mouth, and then they're saying, "Well, we're not gonna send humans there. Like, we're not gonna have boots on the ground. Like, how could you even think that we would even do that?" It's like, well, that's because we've done it before and
We
we're
have over
watching the same playbook.
we have over 20 years of experience doing exactly that, and you think that we're panicking to say that we might be doing it again? Oh, and by the way, it happens to be the 7th nation out of a list of 7 that was detailed by General Wesley.
Wesley.
At some point, you just have to accept the fact that this looks like a multi-decade plan at the behest of another country's foreign policy that is not at the benefit of the American people.
So, what happened to each of these countries after they were overthrown? So, did they essentially get, I mean, you know more about geopolitics than I do. They've been overthrown and then they were regime changed, each of them? What's the state of these countries on the Wesley Clark list
Oh,
now?
not good. It's Libya, Yemen, they've both been hit hard. Iraq, Afghanistan, toppled entirely. I think is
Somalia.
one of them, and we bombed the hell out of it.
It was run by gangs for a while.
And also, we were bombing them during that period too. Point being, and Libya is the 6th, and that's
Mhm.
a fucking open air slave market. So it's like, none of them have gone well. So I think that's the biggest argument in the non-interventionist camp's corner that's, like, irrefutable. If you had this list of 7 nations and they were all led, I didn't love the leadership of most of those countries. Some of them weren't terrible, but most of them were not good. But if your track record was, okay, we're gonna conquer all these countries through intervention or invasion or bombing campaigns or CIA coups, and as a consequence, yeah, democracy broke out, peace broke out, everyone stopped fighting, guns stopped shooting, and it's like, okay, well then, I'll listen to what you have to say about Iran. But it's like, the 6 other ones were disasters.
What do you think? What is the reason?
I'm not in the money camp. I think when I was a young libertarian, I looked at it that way much more. I definitely bought into what I think is largely a lie, honestly, at this point, that it was about getting the oil. We got to get the oil from Iraq. Halliburton and Blackwater and these other companies, they made a fortune in rebuilding. If you want to make an argument about the money, the argument is the rebuilding money. That's where a lot of money is. So you rebelize the country and then you bring in American contractors to build things up. Okay, there's some money being made there, no doubt about it. But I think those are like campaign donations that are offset by those contracts. I think it's a power play. I think it's about soft power brought about through hard power. So you topple a dictator that does not do your bidding, does not go along with you. But in that region, it's more about what Israel wants, in my opinion. And then once you replace them with a leadership that's a little bit more amicable, or a country that's just so fucked up that they can't pose a threat to Israel, it's like, okay, mission accomplished. I think that's what it's been.
So it's like break your legs and sell you crutches.
Yeah, kind of. And I think the other thing that really drives me nuts is that to paint it as humanitarian, it's like, you don't give, I mean, come on. Like, does anyone after 20 plus years of bombing and sanction regimes and starving and all this just madness. Can anyone look at that and go like, "Oh, it's clear to me that you guys care about these people." Is it not clear that they don't care about these people, that they're obviously collateral damage in war of conquest?
During COVID overthrowing of leadership of countries that weren't compliant with big pharma, I think there were 3 to 5 presidents of different third world countries taken out because they weren't compliant with the shot. They came up with a backstories like, "Oh, this guy just had heart disease." This one, it was totally unrelated assassination. That happened during COVID, and nobody really noticed because we were all distracted by COVID.
Yeah, I know that there was some overthrows and civil wars and stuff that happened in Africa. It's not as if Haiti is not known for having revolutions anyways. It could just be coincidental. It could be the fact that the economy was fucked up and there's lockdowns and therefore there's real discontent amongst the people. I don't even know if Haiti had lockdowns, to be honest. But yeah, there's just a lot of manipulation of the masses in a way that I think I didn't give full credence to when I was younger.
Breaking news.
What happened?
According to the Washington Post, B-2 bombers fly across Pacific as Trump contemplates Iran strike, and the lead headline that popped down for me said there's been 3 American strikes on Iran nuclear facilities.
So we're bombing Iran.
No, I just wanna read it real quick. What the Washington Post will do is they'll put something like that. That was the headline, that's what grabbed me. I'm sure you saw my face. But I'm reading through it now just to make sure that they weren't just trying to pull you in to read the article.
Yeah. They're
Now they're saying yeah, so it looks like when they wrote the article, they were flying across.
Yeah, that was hours ago.
Yep, and now that's been updated to say that they're bombing. Happy World War III, everybody.
That sucks, man. You know, it's funny too because is it Saturday? It's Saturday, right?
Saturday.
Yeah. I told people that were asking me on X on Wednesday. I said I expect it to happen Friday, so I was off by a day, but that was like just reading the tea leaves. You know, this is why is it really Republican panic? That's
Yes,
the root?
that's what it is. It's
Jesus,
Republic
that's so corny.
they think it's a way to it's just a nickname, and they're so bad at nicknames because the neocons, like the left, cannot meme.
So the
I'm trying to vet that right now.
no, I'm
I
pretty
don't
sure
trust the Washington Post.
it'll be all over X if you want to.
Mhm.
I'm so bummed. This is a point that I'm sure everyone in my audience is capable of making, but I gotta make it anyways.
It's confirmed. Donald Trump
Confirmed.
announced it. Want me to read this?
Sure.
From Donald Trump on Truth. We have completed our very successful attack on 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordo, Natanz, and what the fuck?
It's not
Yes. All planes are now outside of Iran airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordo. All planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that could have done this. Now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That was an act of war,
no kidding.
and there will be retribution onto America. It'll likely be our military sites. No one's saying that there are not sleeper cells in America that they could activate right now because that happened.
Well, I've always believed that if there were sleeper cell like, you know, Laura Loomer claims there's 2,000,000
No,
potential
I mean
sleeper cells. I'm sure there's some. I'm just saying if they had not even 2,000,000, if they had 1,000 that were like really ready to just strap on vests and go ballistic, you would see some of that during the war in Gaza because there's so much anger at America for supporting Israel during that process. So the fact that we haven't makes me feel like it's largely overblown, that it's largely, you know, right-wing propaganda like that. It's funny too that they always bring that up because it's like that's panicking, if you will. But yeah, I think that the real danger, and this is the point that I kept trying to make to Laura Loomer, is I was trying to be friendly about it, but still very frustrated. She kept saying, you know, "What is the fucking big deal?" Like, look, Laura, if you bomb another country and they're not just a total bitch about it, they're gonna respond. And guess what? Iran, unfortunately, has stationed their country directly next to dozens of American military bases. Oh, I'm sorry. What I meant to say was that America stationed dozens of military bases all around Iran, as we've done with China and other countries and Russia. They have within their reach, as you know, Dave Smith always says, they can touch us. We don't have escalation dominance, and therefore it's almost undoubted that they're gonna fucking respond. And if an American soldier gets killed, which probably will happen, then we're at war.
yes, that's an act of war, and I've tried to explain this, and they're like, "Well, it's different because Iran is a terrorist state and America is a superpower. So If they bombed our nuclear facilities, then that would be an act of war because we're bigger than them. But if we bomb theirs, they're terrorists, and so it's different.
Right.
I'm like, there's no logic behind this at all.
Well, you try and hold an equal moral standard to both sides, they accuse you of moral relativism, which is so bizarre because it's like, no, I'm actually trying to apply the same morality to both sides. Not to say that we're both equally bad or good or anything like that. I'm just saying, is there a standard that we can actually evaluate this? Who is the aggressor? Who is behaving in an immoral fashion? Like, is it immoral to bomb kids or isn't it? Like, because I would say it is always. It's very immoral to bomb kids. But it does seem as if, like, it's almost certainly going to be like, we've already seen Iran's response against Israel. I don't think that they can allow for this to happen without striking American bases. I mean, I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I hope that they just go, "All right, you've destroyed our nuclear facilities, uncle, mercy." But, like, if they do that, they're at Israel's mercy for the rest of their existence. They'll never be able to defend themselves, ever.
I was just thinking, we don't see each other very often, but every time we do, there's enormous news. When Donald Trump got shot, we
Yep.
just happened to be in Vegas. And now we're doing this interview and World War III starts. What kind of jinxes this, Clint?
Well, let me explain. I think most people know this too. Let me explain kind of the alliance and why a lot of people think that, like, it's fear mongering to say that this might be amount to World War III. But, like, you have to understand that Russia has been at war with Ukraine via our proxy, which is Ukraine. Russia and Iran are extremely close
Mhm.
allies. Syria was their ally. It's already gone. Russia has obviously been in this war for years, so they feel very much under threat as well. They cannot see their other big ally in the Middle East go down without a fight. So, unless they make a deal with Trump and they're like, "All right, we're now members of the West," but does anybody see that happening?
Mm-mm.
I don't. So, basically, we're now in a position where Putin is going to feel, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but it looks highly likely that he's going to feel as if we have to defend
Yeah,
Iran.
absolutely. It feels to me like Iran is Russia's Israel, essentially. They always felt like we're going to take care of this little country. It's the way that America treats Israel, even though I feel like there's more of Israel running the US than US taking care of Israel, but it's like we're always gonna have your back, and that's how it's always felt to me with Russia and Iran, so and now we sorta came at Putin, and now we have another superpower that we're dealing with. We're not dealing with this small terrorist state that's on its knees, as Ted Cruz said, while everybody else is saying it's the biggest threat in the world. The thing about the neocons, they really have to get on the same page and have one unified message.
You'd think, but they don't actually, because they can pivot from. There was comparisons of Saddam Hussein to Hitler.
I remember.
You know,
Mhm.
Putin, also Hitler. The
Netanyahu,
supreme
yep.
supreme leader, obviously Hitler. Xi Jinping, certainly Hitler. It's like they don't have to pick one because
Mhm.
they just apply the same fucking script to whatever country they want, whatever country is in their crosshairs at any given moment, and there will always be about a third of America that just goes like, "Yup, bomb 'em."
You know what's interesting about that? It's the same way. I mean, they're always accuse your enemy of that which you're guilty. So woke right. What do the Marxists do? They take one thing and they take the same storyline and they apply it to the one thing.
Mm,
So, it's like BLM. How do we get black people to be in power again? Well, we got to abolish the family, religion, nations, borders, truth. And how do we overthrow the banks and the capitalists? We got to overthrow family and religion
yeah.
and history and truth. It's all the same script. And that's what they do. They're like, well, we got to do this because that's Hitler. Well, we
Well,
got to overthrow this country because it's Hitler.
and as you probably are aware, the root ideology of neoconservatism gets its rise from Bolshevism. So
Mm.
it's like it's not really a coincidence. I know a lot of people would think like, "Oh, you think the woke and the neocons are like the same?" It's like, yeah, actually they are in a lot of ways, like profound, deep ways.
Speaking of Bolsheviks, isn't it interesting that we are kind of force fed,
Excuse me, Trotskyites. I said Bolsheviks, but go
right?
ahead.
Well, we're kind of force fed Hitler and killing the Jews, but we're not taught about the Bolshevik Revolution at all.
Oh, that's weird.
Mm,
Why is that? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, given the news that just broke, it's just one of those things that like you either laugh about it a little bit or you cry.
Mm.
I don't think anyone's gone any harder than I have against this. I really, I was lamenting this last night on X to Justin Amash because he was saying there's a reason that I rarely endorse other politicians. And he's like, the reason is because I've almost never known anybody that went to DC and actually maintained their principles, their values, did what they promised.
Thomas Massey, and that's about it.
Right, and Rand to an extent for
Yeah.
sure. I'm sure he would give those guys a pass, or he would probably endorse them if they needed it, which they don't. But I think for me, what I've struggled with most about this presidency is that this was the first time I really felt as if I didn't know, but I had a vibe, I had a feel for Tulsi. I mean, you've interviewed her too.
Yeah.
I had a vibe certainly for Kash Patel. I spent a couple hours with the guy and talked to him at length. RFK Jr. I've met. Trump I didn't meet, but we were at the same event. And then Vivek, obviously. Elon, who you know to a certain extent. And it's like I've never felt as if I had any sense of the moral character, the internal drives of any other White House ever. I just felt as if like this was our best chance of having an administration that we could influence to do a little bit of good, just a little bit. And it's like if we end up in if we end up in a full-on war with Iran, which looks likely, if we end up in World War III, well then I made a huge fucking mistake. I made a huge fucking now, in fairness, it absolutely could have happened under Kamala Harris, obviously. But I really thought that Trump would try and avoid this, and he is not.
Because we know Kamala Harris is more of a communist than a neocon.
Yeah.
So
But as we just described,
yep,
there's some same roots.
absolutely. So I think we would have probably gone in, but it would have been a different angle.
I think it would have just been Ukraine. I think it would have been Ukraine. I think we would have escalated heavy in Ukraine. This just happened. It is a bombing campaign. It does not mean necessarily that Iran will respond. They may just eat it. They might. But if they respond and if they kill any quantity of American troops, I think you know as well as I do that we're in a full-blown war.
I'm a libertarian, so most of my followers are pretty like small L like I am. I have a lot of Massey and Rand Paul and Ron Paul disciples, but I shared this post about Trump and I wrote, "Pray for our troops, there will be retribution." And the comments are like, "No ground troops, planes are almost home. I smell success." It's like, yeah, now you smell success, but what you're gonna smell when you think they're just gonna get on their knees?
I don't think people understand the nature of the dynamic here. Now, that, as I've said many times, that does not mean that Iran will not just eat this. They may say, look, if we fucking strike American troops in the region, which they have full capacity to do. So that's a fact that they absolutely could if they wanted to. There is a chance, given that America is still very powerful militaristically, that they just go, we're not going to do it. Once you've already committed to bombing Israel, which, if it's accurate that Israel has 200 nuclear warheads and obvious capacity to reach Iran with them, where it's like, this is kind of a point of no return. And if they feel that way, if they feel as if they cannot just stop, if they feel as if they stop, Israel is going to come in and take them out anyways, then they're not going to stop. And they are going to escalate. And they're going to try and get Russia and China involved on their side. And if that happens, then we are fully in World War III. And I don't think anybody understands really how fucking insanely dangerous all of this is.
Let's get canceled and talk about Greater Israel.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, there have been plans that have been talked about openly, including a map that Netanyahu showed before October 7th that included, West Bank, Gaza, portions of, I think it was Turkey, portions of Iran, portions of Syria that all become part of Greater Israel.
Excellent. So what's the overlap with the Wesley Clark prediction and Greater Israel?
It happens to be like 2/3 of them.
Interesting. This is very fascinating.
We're learning together. I mean, this is why I came to the conclusions I have. It's not like I'm just fucking making it up. I just know what this list said, and you guys are taking them. You're doing it. So, what's your bet? Does Iran respond heavily?
I think Iran will bomb a base. I don't think they'll activate a sleeper cell. I think they're too disorganized. I'm sure there are sleeper cells. We have like 20 million illegal people in our country and they're unvetted. And I'm sure that they're sleeper cells. I feel like we've had one or two activate on a very, very small scale or try to in the last 4 years.
Well, yeah, if you want to go down the really dark path, Alex Jones and others, people that I generally respect, have been beating this drum for a long time that there's sleeper cells. They don't really talk about Iran all that often. Sometimes it was like Muslim terrorists, but oftentimes it was like CCP. And my great fear is that if that's true, which I am, just as I already said earlier, I am not convinced that it's true that there's thousands and thousands of sleeper cells. If you end up in World War III, it's not going to be like Iraq War, Persian Gulf type shit. It's going to be fucking chaos here. And we've never dealt with that, like not since Pearl Harbor. And even then we didn't really deal with war on our soil. It was just like one attack and then it was war over there the entire time. So that's my great fear, man. Given our cultural divide, like the racial divide, all these other things that have been, worsened because of cultural Marxism, like we're not going to handle that. Like if we have war on our soil, we're going to fall apart.
They're gonna attack the power grid. I don't think they need thousands. I think they need just a few guys willing, like you said, to just strap a vest on and go for it. Pearl Harbor, I believe, was unsolicited. I believe that just kind of, I mean, America hadn't declared war at that point. It kind
Mhm.
of, the attack kind of just happened, kind of an unsolicited attack.
Mm-mm.
No. Did America drop a bomb before?
No.
Okay.
But what we did do is that Japan's an island and we put a full oil embargo on them.
Mm,
We basically gave them no option. If you're in a war and another country says, "You're not allowed to have any oil,"
mm-hmm.
how would you respond to that? You go like, "Oh, we're at war then."
Yep.
Like, obviously, we're at war. So, yes, it was a sneak attack.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that Japan, this tiny little island, was like, "Yeah, we really wanna fight America"? Like, no.
That's why they fought a tiny little island.
Yeah. So, yeah, that story is a little bit complex. But anyways, you were gonna make a point to try and connect that to this situation. So what was the point?
I was going in a direction, but then I had a question, and then my brain
That's fair. That happens.
Well-
I'm kind of scatterbrained as a consequence of this breaking news because I haven't had the time to internalize what it could mean. So, I mean, you guys are getting to watch my real time reaction to what comes next,
Mhm.
and it's not good.
Well, I'm really glad my live reaction when Trump got shot was not recorded. I started crying.
She did. I was there. I had just, this was actually to tie back into the other story. That was right after I had done the panel with Kash Patel. And then Trump's face was grazed by a bullet.
And I'm just like, I just started crying. And Clint's like, "Are you okay? What's the matter?" And I'm like, "I have no idea. I don't know why I'm doing this." It was just the strangest reaction to me. It was just such massive news, but I'm handling World War III pretty well.
Yeah, you are actually. You're handling World War III much better than you handled Trump almost getting shot. But
I hadn't endorsed Trump or anything at that point. I was still
Yeah.
on the fence. I endorsed him that night.
no, you posted it that night. I
Mhm.
remember. But yeah, I mean, that was concerning. And those are the type of moments like just history changing moments. Like if you see a president assassinated, the course of your country changes. Like even from a libertarian perspective, you don't have to like it. You don't have to respect the presidency or the White House or the government or any of that. It just changes history. It does, because a lot of people do believe in the government. They do believe in the authority of the president, everything else. And like, if that happens, it just totally takes whatever course you're on and it puts it on a new one, whether it's good or bad, it's new. This is a course changer that, in my opinion, derails Trump's legacy unless he just by a miracle, Iran just goes, we're done. If that doesn't happen, this ruins Trump's legacy. I'm telling you what I honestly think. I think that this destroys America First, MAGA. It's over. It will be a complete civil war. I don't mean that in actual fighting per se, but it'll be a civil war divide between the MAGA America First. You'll have the Trump sycophants. He can do no wrong. And you'll have the actual America First people that meant it when they said it. No more wars.
Yeah, the next 48 hours are gonna be really telling, really crucial, and I warn everybody there's going to be fog of war.
Sure.
Just use a
There's not going to be. We're in it right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know anything that's happening right now for sure. The propaganda is going to get heavier.
It's gonna get very heavy, and you just have to use discernment. Everything that you hear, there's gonna be a lot out of Israel. The Israel channels are the biggest pushers of the propaganda. Also, mainstream media, they don't really love this war. The mainstream media, they're a different kind of neocon. They don't really love the defense of Israel. They're not the Republican neocon.
But Fox News has been beating the
Fox News.
Yes.
I'm talking MSNBC.
Sure.
They're
Well, because they always have to paint it as Trump being the bad guy no matter what. But I'll tell you, I would be surprised, particularly if American troops get hit in response, which is probable. I bet you CNN, MSNBC, they all get behind Trump. I know that sounds crazy and people won't even believe me when I say it, but I'd be surprised. Not all of them, but a big chunk of them are going to start to say like, we got to, defend our country.
Once we're at war, we need the unified front. And the
Exactly.
thing is, the people that own the news stations, whoever owns the information, they know that we need a unified front behind a war that
Of
we are
course.
in.
You're barely old enough to remember, but I know you remember a little bit, was the feeling after 9/11.
Yes.
And it's like, there has never been a higher high in terms of, in my lifetime, in terms of patriotism, bloodlust, like, let's get vengeance, you know? And none of that exists right now. So we are entering into the biggest war. Iran is a bigger foe than any other war that we've ever been in hot, because Russia is a proxy war still.
Mhm.
Now, hopefully that stays that way.
Yes.
This is the biggest foe we've ever taken on, and we are entering it with the least public support for a war in my lifetime. That's fucking crazy. They just stopped caring what we have to say.
And there was a vigil, and I'm talking Massachusetts. This is where, and I mean, this area that I grew up in, they are hippies. They are the lesbian, liberal hippie farmers. Okay. And they were having this vigil in the street, and everybody was singing God Bless America and just America the Beautiful. And I'm talking, these are the people who cry and gag when you say Donald Trump and think America is racist and all that. It was after 9/11, the day after 9/11. This is the feeling that there was in the most liberal area of the most liberal state.
And that was a nationwide sensation. I mean, it was obviously New York was not some big George Bush country, and they couldn't have been more behind it. I mean, everybody was behind it. And, I wasn't behind the broader war on terror, but I certainly, in the immediate aftermath, was like, whoever did that has to pay.
Yeah.
Because even from a libertarian perspective, like, yeah, I'm not an interventionist, but that doesn't mean I don't believe in self-defense.
Non-aggression.
Right. And we had been aggressed upon. Now, the story complicates once you start to like really dig into who was involved with all that. You're like,
Mhm.
all right, maybe we weren't, I don't know. Did we aggress upon ourselves? But you know what I'm saying? It was like, anyways, point being, to contrast that period to this period, it couldn't be more different. You had, I don't know what the numbers were, but I would imagine it was 80 to 90% people that were in support of like, just go blow up something. They were like,
Absolutely.
get them.
Yep.
And that's not how we feel right now.
And I mean, a lot of it, we were in high school. So we were at an age where they say the millennials, the zennials or whatever, like we're watching World War III unfold, and we also watched the towers fall from math class
Yeah.
in the Great Recession while
from
we're
our
trying
early
to buy a
20s, yeah.
house. Yeah, we're trying to raise kids during COVID. I mean, we millennials get a lot of shit, but we've been through a lot of shit.
Yeah, it's been hard, man. It's been hard. And honestly, though, like, Zoomers also get a lot of shit, and I've got a lot of sympathy for them because, like, everything we've gone through to a certain extent, they've gone through. They were like younger, so they didn't may have not felt it as poignantly, but then they also had like the social media, online dating,
Mhm.
and then also like the hard woke education and the sexual progressivism.
Mhm.
And I'm like, this is where I start to lean into like, yeah, this is fucking psychological
Mhm.
warfare, and it makes you wonder if we've been in World War III for a long time.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised because the warfare that we're getting is on the internet. So it's like an information warfare. So we have been at World War III because we've had China or whatever changing the algo on TikTok so that their kids in China, if they can't even use TikTok, but when they could, they would have like math lessons
Yeah.
and things to make
And
them smarter
musical
here.
lessons and things like that. I think that it could be just a product of cultural differences that young people in China are just raised to be like good, productive people, kind of how older generations in America were. And perhaps the algorithm is just a product of, we show you what you want to see. And they wanted to see that.
True.
Or their parents don't allow them to see the other stuff and they just respect their parents so they don't do it. I could be wrong though. I mean, it could certainly be psychological warfare. And it's undoubtedly true that American social media companies do that to foreign countries at the behest of the CIA and things like
Mhm.
that too. So
Yeah, it's probably a mix of we're going to keep raising our children this way. And this is all our children can say because we are a communist state.
right. But, I think the unfortunate reality is too, like, if a country is filled with children that want brain rot content, are you doing anything wrong? Because, like, from a purely American laissez-faire capitalist model, you should just like, the algo ought to be giving you what you wanna see.
Mhm.
That keeps you on the app longer. So, if you're the type of person that wants terrible things to be filling your brain, well, then you get what you asked for, you know?
And that goes back to American culture, like parents raising kids to want to see the terrible things, or parents barely raising kids. Kids really are raising themselves
That's
now.
the problem. In my opinion, that's the big problem, and you're a very attentive parent, so you can speak to this better than I can, but I know, I was a latchkey kid, to a large
Same.
extent.
Mhm.
And, some people would say that means that you're raising yourself, but like I wasn't raising myself with the internet. I was like almost a professional rollerblader, but I was really good at it. I actually dropped into the bowl at the Carlsbad skate park with Tony
Ooh,
Hawk when I was 9 years old. So
wow.
yeah, it was very good. Anyways, setting that aside, I'm gay. Fully out of the closet now. But what I mean is I was raising myself, but I was doing like
You were developing yourself.
community endeavors
Mm.
and athletic endeavors, and I had real friends, and like it just doesn't seem like the kids raising themselves today are doing that. Like they're raising themselves on a laptop
Mhm.
or an iPad, and it's like that isn't good.
Yep, because they're getting so we might get our influence when we were kids. We might have got it from our friends or maybe an uncle or an aunt that we would go see when our mom wasn't home because we were latchkey kids and she'd be home for dinner. We go out and play, we come home when the streetlights came on. It was just the way that our world worked, or my world worked anyway. I don't wanna make any assumptions about you, but, I'd still have my mom, she'd still be in the house. I wasn't raising myself in that sense. I was able to develop myself and make bad choices that I learned from and make good choices that I learned from. Right now, we have a lot of I work from home. I'm very blessed to be able to do that. And I have great kids, and I know a lot of parents say that, but I actually do. They're not raising themselves on the internet. They play outside, they go for bike rides, they play sports, and they do clubs and all the things that kids should be
Yeah,
doing.
they're basically being raised in the same style that we were.
Exactly. Yes. My oldest daughter has a Discord and she only talks to her friends from school on it. I'm guilty of the weird chat rooms. I was in the Will Smith chat room growing up. That was my favorite chat room. It was
Oh,
just on his website, willsmith.com, and he had a chat room. So I would go hang out in the Will Smith chat room, and I thought it was so cool. So AOL is where we would talk to our friends, on that we knew in real life. And that's what the kids do with Discord. Then my middle daughter, she likes to game and she games with her cousin and her friend up in Massachusetts because we live in Florida. So they use the internet to talk to people that
they actually know.
they know in real
Yeah,
life. And that's it. That's the extent of their internet use.
right.
They don't have well, MJ, my older daughter, does have a Figaro account if you know anything about. She runs my Figaro fan account.
Mhm.
So, but that's the extent of their internet use.
Yeah, no, I think it's just a much healthier way to do things. And, this is kind of what I said during that conversation with Tripoli and them was like, I hate feeling like a Luddite. I hate it. But I can't help but acknowledge that, like, and granted, it could be correlation, causation, and maybe this is wrong to connect these, but like our culture has degraded so rapidly under this all encompassing internet framework.
Mhm.
It's like, it's just so obvious to me. And that doesn't mean that I don't love the internet. It's changed my life and improved my life in many, many ways. But at the same time, like on net, can we really argue that it's been like the best thing ever? And I'm like, I don't think so.
There is a dopamine addiction that we're dealing
For
with.
real.
It is a massive addiction. I use the internet for work and
So do I.
primarily. You too.
Yeah.
Same thing. We primarily use it for work. And I think that that's a reason why my kids aren't big internet kids because they see me use it for work and they're like, well, mom does it and it's boring.
So
Exactly. It's gay and retarded, So then that's just the way that it is. And I'm totally okay with them thinking that.
mhm.
But when it comes to Instagram, for instance, and even women my age, they deal with seeing people live the perfect lives, have the perfect
Course, yeah.
homes, see the perfect kids, and people put their best moments up on
Right.
Instagram.
Well, because keeping up with the Joneses has always been a phenomenon, but the Joneses was just the wealthy family in your town. It wasn't the wealthiest person in
The world.
Dubai, And it's like at this point, even if you're like really successful by like any other standards, if you're in the top 1%, your life sucks compared to a lot of people on earth. Just the truth. You ain't getting just because you're in the top 1%, you're making 400, $500,000 a year. You ain't flying on a private jet. You may not even be flying first class, depending on how many kids you got at home. I think it just exasperated the issues with keeping up with the Joneses.
Mhm. That's actually a really good point. A lot of people get depressed and then they get mad. And so Instagram will respond with things like, we're going to remove the likes so that nobody could
Mhm.
see how many likes they have. And this is going to fix that. It's like, no, that's going to make them crave it somewhere else
Mm,
because they felt the
yeah.
likes. Exactly.
Yeah, I know Elon was talking about that for a while, and both you and I were like, nope, don't want that.
Mm-mm. No, see, with likes on X and with political stuff, it comes down to consensus. This is where ratioing comes from.
Sure.
It's like, all right, if there's 100 comments and 1 like, you had a bad idea, and people need to know that that was a bad idea, and that's how they read it, and they can to about a 90% accuracy, I would estimate.
Well,
Sometimes, you get dogpiled by the left and they're just trying to ratio you. Like, so it's a plan to ratio you. It's not just this natural conclusion that
right.
this was a dumb thing to say. It's that we need to make this look like it was a dumb thing to say.
It does allow for kind of community policing of wrong think, if you will, in a way that's like it's passive though. It's not aggressive. It's not state violence. It's just like everyone thinks that you sound like a creep right
Mm.
now, that type of shit. So there is value in it, but I do want to just circle back to the topic du jour because we're going to end here soon. What do you think? Where are we going?
It looks like World War III, and I think that once they pulled my train of thought.
World War III
In
and
World War III, they pulled Tulsi into it, and that was the last person we thought would break. And once they got
actually,
her,
we need to explain that. Do you want to explain it or should I?
you can explain it.
So 6 weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago.
It was March. When she had the first interview was late March, I thought.
Okay, so 3
Yep.
months ago.
Yep.
She gives her testimony in front of, I think it was a Congress.
Yep.
And she gives her annual assessment. And she's very explicit that while, yes, Iran has continued to produce uranium at 60% purity or whatever it's called, and therefore, like, that's not good, but they have not made the decision to restart their nuclear program, which was suspended in 2003.
Mm.
So this is not like a country that's obviously angling for a nuclear weapon. In
Mhm.
fact, they have demonstrated pretty clearly that they were not trying to build one because they could have. And she posts the testimony in which she says what I just said. And she goes, in fact, they could be, they could have a nuclear weapon in 2 weeks if they wanted to. And it's like, that is such a huge shift.
Mhm.
The sentiment was, as of 3 months ago, they're not going for nukes. The sentiment of her revising that statement today was, yes, they are. And the fact that that proceeded within less than 24 hours to us bombing them, I don't think is a coincidence.
I knew she was the last in line. As
Yep.
soon as she got behind it, it was over. As soon as she did, I'm like, yeah, it's over. We're going to war.
I agree.
And the response to Tulsi in general by I guess, the MAGA, with the neocons, is that Tulsi lied to Congress and needs to lose her job. I'm like, no, she literally didn't lie to
I
Congress.
think she actually told the truth.
She told the truth.
Yeah. It's so disappointing, man. And therefore gave, I guess you could say, casus belli, like cause for war against them, even though nations have a right to build nuclear weapons. They have a right to defend themselves. I don't like the leadership of Iran. I don't want anyone to have nukes, including my own country. But it doesn't change the fact that if we have massive nuclear arsenals and if people are autonomous, sovereign nations, they ought to have the right to defend themselves too. Now, these weapons are so dangerous that I'll grant that it's existential. Like if you get a nuclear weapon in the hands of a madman, it's an existential threat. But the truth is that in many instances, I think America is led by madmen, and we have thousands of nuclear weapons. And Russia's got them, China's got them, and France has got them, and Pakistan has got them, and the UK's got them, North Korea. So,
And Israel.
do the people have a right to defend themselves from Israel, who is obviously aggressing upon them in a very fucking savage way? Do they not have a right to try and defend themselves with a nuclear arsenal, given that their aggressor has hundreds of nuclear weapons themselves?
The goal is to wipe them out. And there is something I would like to address, and I'll use your show to do it if you don't mind.
Feel free.
Comparing every war that you want to get into is not the Revolutionary War. The Revolutionary War was a civil war separated by an ocean. And you had the king of these countries literally arming people to kill women and children. He was arming natives. He was arming Canadians. He was arming the Hessians. He was bringing colonists out to the ocean and saying, well, you're either going to walk the plank, we're going to throw you overboard, or you're going to go back and kill your whole family and all of your friends. And those are your choices. So, and if you don't believe me, you can read the last 7 grievances in the Declaration of Independence, and that'll cover all of them. So it wasn't just about taxes. We weren't mad about the taxes. Comparing an offensive strategy to a defensive strategy where you're really just trying to stop a tyrant king from killing everybody, it's not the same thing. And this is what I get the most of. This is because I'm anti-war, and they'd be like, well, how can you be anti-war if you are all about the Revolutionary War? I'm like, defensive.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm a non-interventionist.
Right.
And there was no intervention.
I don't know any libertarian that doesn't support. The vast majority of libertarians recognize that the Revolutionary War, the American Revolution, is one of the only wars that's been just, because we don't support very many wars, but that is crystal clear a just war.
Also, other grievances, they had King George, there were 2 tiers of justice where he would actually take Americans and have them tried in England. So you got in trouble, you were gonna have to sail on a ship and go all the way to England to have your trial. So you wouldn't have a jury of your peers.
Yeah.
He would have mock trials for
So that
redcoats.
probably helped formulate the Constitution, didn't it? With making
Absolutely.
sure that your trial of
Yes.
your peers, because they were like, "You're not gonna ship you to England."
Also quartering troops, that's another one. Quartering troops, that's another one. You know, so a lot of the Bill of Rights is framed around these abuses that King George did to the American colonists. And to be like, well, it's literally just like the revolution to go bomb Iran nuclear facilities is the dumbest, the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Well, completely agree. I would say I don't actually hear much of that. What I hear a lot of is it's every war is always World War II. Every war is World War II. And every leader that is our enemy is always Hitler or Stalin or whatever. And it's just not. You
Mhm.
know, like it doesn't mean that they're not bad also. Some of them are actually genuinely bad. And in fact, everything that you think you know about World War II is probably not accurate either.
Nope.
It's a good thought experiment just to think about what the mainstream narrative, what the history books will actually say about the past 5 years, and think about how unbelievably different that will read compared to what you think transpired. Now extrapolate that back to before the internet and 75 plus years ago and World War II. Do you think that it would actually reflect the reality, given that they had no independent reporting or social media by which you can get other counter narratives out there? Or would it probably be more fucking delusional and detached from reality? I think the answer is the latter.
It's gonna be ridiculous looking back in history from 2013 to about 2020. That is completely made up. All of the real news was completely censored in that time. So there's really no evidence of like I use when I do all my research, I use artifacts, source documents. I use stuff right from that time period because I can check them against each other. And that helps me kind of gauge what's truth and what's not by what witnesses witness. I can read through trial documents and everything because they've preserved it all so well. We don't have that for that period of time, so that's gonna be a really interesting period of time, the Obama presidency. It's gonna be very interesting, and then the beginning of the Trump presidency, gonna be very
Oh,
interesting to
it's
look
all
back
it's
on
all
in history.
detached from reality, in my
Mhm.
opinion.
Yep. You can find me on X at TRHL Official. I also do outside media work for Timcast, and I'll be on that show in a little over a week. You can follow us over there and help support our work. Become a subscriber.
At Liberty Lock Pod on X, if you enjoyed this conversation. Because of the breaking news, I'm actually going to release this one today because I've been off for a long time, and this is obviously massive news. And the interview with Sam Tripoli, Austin, and Jose will be up tomorrow. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe, share it around. If you want to support my work at Liberty Lock Pod on X, you can subscribe there. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, you're the best. Hugs and kisses. And God willing, we're not actually in World War III. I guess we'll know very soon.